what RACES stands for as we think about informative writing this week. The R in RACES represents restate the question by turning it into a statement. The A in RACES represents answer all parts of the question. The C in RACES represents giving examples. We call that citing examples and evidence from the text. So we use sentence starters like the text states or in paragraph 4. And then explain, the E in RACES. Explain how your evidence supports your answer. We always use a sentence starter that says this shows blank or this means blank. And then the S in RACES stands for sum it up. That sounds a lot like a conclusion. End with a summary sentence, and a lot of times growing writers use in summary or in conclusion, or as you can see, those are just some ways that you can wrap up your writing. So now that we know what RACES stands for, today we are going to dive in with our brainstorming, and we will not do every letter today. We're only going to start with a couple. Before we can do that, we have to understand the prompt. So we'll be looking at how do we break down a prompt to understand it to be able to write about it. Let's look at our prompt for this week. Our prompt says, you have read the excerpt from Because of Winn-Dixie. Opal's first friend in Naomi is Miss Franny Block. There is a huge age difference between the two of them. What text evidence helps the reader believe that Miss Franny and Opal will remain friends for a long period of time? Be sure to use specific details and examples from the text to support your answer. Now that paragraph can be overwhelming. So it is our job as the writer to decide exactly what do I need to do. What is this prompt asking me to do? So in order to break down that prompt and understand what to write about, in this class we use a do-what T-chart, where we brainstorm first the verbs, what we're asked to do, and then secondly, what does it actually want me to do in the prompt? So let's start by looking for what the prompt is asking us to do. So now let's go ahead and brainstorm one more time what this prompt is asking us to do. You have read the excerpt from Because of Winn-Dixie. Opal's first friend in Naomi is Miss Franny Block. There is a huge age difference between the two of them. What text evidence helps the reader believe that Miss Franny and Opal will remain friends for a long period of time? So first, I'm asked to find text evidence that proves they will be friends a long time. My prompt also says, be sure to use specific details and examples from the text. So I'm going to brainstorm use specific details and examples. It also says I need to support my answer. Well, support is a verb asking me to do something. So in my prompt, I have to find text evidence that proves they will be friends a long time. I have to use specific details and examples, and I have to be able to support my answer. Notice on my do-what T-chart, my verbs are under the word do, and what I'm asked to do is under the word what. So now I've broken down the prompt, and I can understand more about what this prompt is asking me to do. Now I know I have to do 3 things in my writing. If I don't break it down first, then I don't understand what I'm asked to write about. So today in writing, we have learned 2 things. We have learned what the RACES stands for, and we have learned how to break down a prompt to understand it. Tomorrow, we will start organizing, and brainstorming our ideas for this prompt. We will take it a letter at a time, and by the end of the week, we will have a well-developed piece of writing. Now let's move into vocabulary. We are going to add 3 new words onto this week's vocabulary knowledge. Last week, we learned 3 different terms. Now let's add on a new word for this week. Please echo me. Optional.
Optional.
Very good.
Very good.
I'm noticing the definition is on our notes says left to choice. So first I have the word optional, and now I have the definition, left to choice. I can also use this word optional in a sentence. The extra credit assignment was optional or left to the choice of the student. At this time, I would like all students to draw a picture of the word optional in their interactive notebook. It can match my picture, where you will see extra credit summer reading project, or you can create your own image, but it needs to be matching the definition of the word. Let's look at our second new word for this week. I say it, you say it, maturity.
Maturity.
I say it, you say it, maturity.
Maturity.
I say it, you say it, maturity.
Maturity.
Fully developed in mental, emotional, or physical qualities. Another word let's look at this sentence. After several weeks of watering the plant, it grew to full maturity. So it was fully developed. It was fully grown. At this time, please draw the picture for the word maturity. It can match my picture or it can be your own picture, but it needs to show the meaning of the word maturity. All students are drawing maturity in their interactive notebook. Now that you have drawn your picture, I would like for you to help me fix a mistake. Please cross out the word cancel, and instead, please write grown for your synonym. Thank you for helping me fix this mistake. A synonym for the word maturity is the word grown. So all students are making their interactive notebook match my screen at this time. Now you will notice we're not filling in our antonyms today. We will do those tomorrow. Okay? So now let's go ahead and look at that highlighted task. You have matured since kindergarten. Tell your partner one way that you have matured. Now let's look at the word reason. I say it, you say it, reason.
Reason.
I say it, you say it, reason.
Reason.
I say it, you say it, reason.
Reason.
A statement given to explain a belief or an act. Notice our synonym, logic. Notice that image is a picture of the word why. A reason always tells why. Please draw your picture now. It can match my picture or it can be your own picture. So you might draw yourself explaining the reason you left your dirty socks in the living room. Make sure your image shows the word reason. We're all drawing a picture. Notice my sentence as you're drawing. The student gave 3 reasons why she believed her answer was correct. And you'll notice I added an extra picture of that dog saying, but why? Why can't I come to school with you? I'm going to give you just a moment to draw your picture. Today we are going to learn about making inferences. As we learn together, let's go ahead and dive in with an example. As we think about making inferences today, there's 2 important words we have to understand. The first word is the word explicit. This means on the line. You can find the answer to a question right there on the page. The text shouts it out loud and we call call it right there information. So it's easy to find. The opposite of that is an inference, our focus for today. An inference is when we have to look between the lines and we have to use clues from the text. It's often whispered and not shouted. These are the kinds of questions you have to use clues to create something new. These are the types of questions that the author will not tell you right there on the page, but instead you have to make an inference using the clues. Let's look at our notes on page 41 of our interactive notebook. Let's dig deeper into our notes and look at how they can help us understand more about making inferences. Our notes tell us that authors don't always tell their reader everything. I'm going to underline that. They rely on the reader to use inferential thinking to understand everything going on in the story. Now, there's a big word, inferential thinking, and it just matches this word inference, which is another word for making an inference. So let's look at the formula that growing readers use when they make inferences. First, they have text clues. I'm going to put a box around text clues. So notice, first we have to look at the text to make an inference. Secondly, we have to think about what we already know, and we're going to add that to our clue. I'm going to put a cloud around that. Now, when I add my text clues and what I already know, or my background knowledge, then I can create an inference. I'm going to put a star around the word inference. So let's look at an example from our notes. Here's our text clue. My heart started to race as I stared down at the broken pieces. How will I be able to explain this when Mom gets home? I thought to myself. That's a text clue. So I'm going to add it to what I already know. I call that my background knowledge. I think the character is a kid because they mention their mom, and most adults don't think that way. Notice also, I think the kid is nervous because that is what happens when your heart races. This is called my background knowledge. Now, I can add these two things together to equal an inference. The kid accidentally broke something important to his mom, and he is nervous about telling her when she gets home. This is an inference. This is something new based on a clue. Inferences are always new pieces of information. An author will not tell you. You, as the reader, have to use the clue to figure it out. And that's what makes it so hard sometimes. At this time, I'm going to model what a growing reader does to answer first an explicit question. Those are those types of questions that are right there on the page. They're easy to find. And then we'll move into those harder inferencing questions. Let's start with the first question. I'm noticing my graphic organizer says, what does Miss Franny block look like? So I'm going to go back to the text and I'm going to find exactly what Miss Franny block looks like. As I'm looking through the text, I'm scanning for clues to tell me what she looks like. I'm noticing here on page 31 of the text, it says, "Come on," I said. "Let me help you up. It's okay." I stuck out my hand and Miss Franny took hold of it, and I pulled her up off the floor. She didn't weigh hardly anything at all. Once she was standing on her feet, she started acting all embarrassed, saying how I must think she was a silly old lady mistaking a dog for a bear, but that she had a bad experience with a bear coming into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library a long time ago, and she never had quite gotten over it. I'm thinking this tells me exactly what she looks like. I'm noticing in the text, I'm going to use my highlighter, I'm noticing it says she didn't hardly weigh anything at all. This tells me she's small. And then I'm also noticing it tells me she thinks of herself as a silly old lady. This tells me she's an older person. This information is found right there on the page. So it's an easier type of question. So now I'm going to go back to my graphic organizer. I can answer this in my words. Miss Franny Block looks older and small. She's small and her body is small. And I can actually go back to the text right where I found that, and I can prove that straight from the text. So this is called text evidence. Just because our time is short, I'm going to actually screenshot that. But if this were my small group practice, then I would simply write it. But just for this situation, I'm going to take a picture and place it there. So now let's move to our next question. What was Florida like when Miss Franny was a little girl? I'm going to go back to the text. I think I can find this right there in the text.
We can go back to the block where she said.
As I look back at the text, I'm looking for anything that tells me more about what Florida used to look like. I'm noticing it tells me, what about the bear? I said. Did I mention that Florida was wild in those days? Miss Franny Block said, you did. It was wild. There were wild men and wild women and wild animals. So this tells me Florida wasn't developed like it is now. So there weren't as many stores or people coming to visit. I'm also going to go back a little bit more to see what else I can discover about Florida. Thank you for waiting so patiently. I'm trying to get that writing out of your way. There we go. Thank you for being so patient. I'm noticing it says, back when Florida was wild, when it consisted of nothing but palmetto trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you, Miss Franny Block started in, and I was just a little girl no bigger than you, my father, Herman W. Block, told me that I could have anything I wanted for my birthday. This tells me more about what Florida was like. So it was wild. That's found right there in the text. So now let's go back to that graphic organizer. What was Florida like? It was wild. And now I can add text evidence to support my answer because I found it right here in the text. Back when Florida was wild and it consisted nothing of trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you. I'm going to add that to my graphic organizer straight from the text. So I've proven my answer. There's one more question I want you to think about. What did Miss Franny want for her birthday? I'm noticing this answer can be found right there in the text. So I told him, I said, Daddy, I would most certainly love to have a library for my birthday. A small little library would be wonderful. So I can answer this one in my own words. She asked for a library because it's based on the text. Now let's dig a little bit deeper and look at what it looks like to make an inference. So I'm noticing that growing readers start first when they want to make inferences by thinking first about what they already know. This is called their schema. Think back to our prior knowledge. Growing readers use that schema to help them make inferences. After they think about what they already know, then they go to that evidence. This I'm going to think about like I think about yellow on a stoplight. My evidence is when we look around for clues in the text. And then lastly, green. Our inferences are developed from adding what we already know, our schema, and the evidence from the text to create that inference. This is called something new. So it's kind of like math. We can start by adding part of the text plus our personal experience, and that helps us to draw conclusions or make inferences. So now let's think about how we can make inferences. I'm starting with this question, and it is a little bit more challenging since inferences are more challenging. They're not found right there in the text. I'm noticing there's quotation marks around it, which means it comes straight from the text. So let's start by reading what the text says. A small one, Miss Franny nodded. I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. I'm going to reread it because inside this clue is what I need to make an inference. So Miss Franny is speaking, retelling her story about asking for that library from her father when she was a child. A small one, Miss Franny nodded. I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. So now I'm going to think about what I already know about people that like to share. This is called my schema. So I'm thinking, one thing I already know is that often people who like to share are very giving. So I'm going to brainstorm that, which leads me to an inference about the kind of person Miss Franny might be. And I know that because my text clue says, I wanted to share them too. So now I can make an inference about Miss Franny, something the author does not tell me. So it's something new based on a clue. I can infer that Miss Franny Block is a giving person. Or we might even say the word generous. She didn't just ask for a library for herself. She asked because she wanted to share her books with other people. And she did that even as a child, which tells me a lot about who she is. Okay, guys, let's come back together on this one. The text says, well, I don't know, said Miss Franny. Dogs are not allowed in the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. Here's something I heard you discuss with your team. You said dogs could easily tear up library books. I heard Deja say it. I also heard you guys talk about how that wouldn't be a good combination to put a dog in a library. This is your schema. It's what you already know. So now we can make an inference about the kind of person Miss Franny is. Since she stops and she thinks about the rules, dogs are not allowed, this tells me Miss Franny is a rule follower. I'm going to use the word cautious. Miss Franny is cautious. That means she takes the time to think about her actions before she just allows it to happen. She thinks it through. That's what cautious people do. They think through what might happen based on this decision. Now, this is an inference, guys. The author doesn't tell you Miss Franny is a rule follower. Miss Franny is cautious. We have to know that based on the clue. Okay? Let's look at the next text clue and see what inference we can make. But I showed him how he could stand up on his hind legs and look in the window and see me in there. Now, remember, this is when Opal is teaching the dog, Winn-Dixie, how to look for her through the window. I'm thinking about what I already know about dogs. I want you to think about it too. Don't say anything, just get in your brain. What do we know about dogs? And what inference can we make based on this clue? So let's add that to our graphic organizer. Dogs are teachable or are trainable. So now that leads me to an inference about the kind of dog Winn-Dixie is. So I can infer that Winn-Dixie is an intelligent dog. I'm going to use the word smart. Now, the author didn't tell me Winn-Dixie is smart. I had to create that information based on the clue and based on what I already know. And remember that clue said, I showed him how he could stand up on his hind legs and look in the window and see me there. That's pretty smart that Winn-Dixie knew to follow those steps in order to feel safer when Opal was inside the library, since he wasn't allowed inside. In your interactive notebook, on page 41, you guys can see your notes that match my screen. Today we've learned how growing readers make inferences. I want you to know that to infer, that means you figure out what the author doesn't tell you using story information and what you already know. That's another word for clues in the text. We make inferences by thinking about how the characters feel, thinking about why characters do or say something, thinking about how the setting impacts or changes the story, thinking about what the author reveals about the story, and thinking about how conflicts are handled in the story and how you as a person handle conflicts. This is what a growing reader does to infer. Lastly, we think about what may happen based on what I know. This is called a prediction, and a prediction is a type of inference. Today we have learned how a growing reader uses the clues to create something new or make an inference.